When Sarah first told me about her boss's proposal, I thought it was a joke. Her company's director, a man named Victor Hale, had been trying to have a child with his wife for years without success. He was in his late 40s, wealthy beyond measure, and known for his generosity and his charm. When Sarah said he'd asked her to consider being a surrogate, I laughed it off. We'd been married for 7 years, still trying for a child ourselves, and I assumed she'd never agree to something so personal, so invasive. But that night, she sat me down with a look I hadn't seen before, a mix of determination and quiet guilt. She said Victor and his wife were desperate, that it was just business, that she could help them and help us too. They'd offered her a huge sum, enough to buy us a house, clear our debts, and finally give us the life we'd dreamed of. I listened, torn between disbelief and dread. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely steady, "you can't do this. You're not a machine for rent." But she just smiled sadly, touching my hand as if I didn't understand the bigger picture. "I'm doing it for us," she whispered. That night, as I lay awake, her words echoed in my head, "for us." But somehow, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the start of something that would change everything. The months that followed felt like a slow, unfolding nightmare wrapped in polite smiles and quiet denial. Sarah began the medical process, and I tried to support her, or at least convince myself I was. We attended appointments, met Victor and his wife in person, and signed the endless documents that made it all official. I remember the day of the embryo transfer, Sarah holding my hand tightly, her eyes filled with fear and hope, while Victor stood in the corner of the clinic, silent and tense. When the procedure succeeded, the house filled with a strange kind of happiness, not ours, but something borrowed. At first, she was radiant, glowing with the kind of joy I hadn't seen in years. She talked about the baby constantly, about feeling connected to something bigger than herself. But as the pregnancy advanced, that light began to fade. She became quieter, more distant, and every time Victor called or sent gifts, she'd smile faintly, that same faint smile that used to be mine. I started noticing things, late-night phone calls, sudden mood swings, visits to Victor's mansion for check-ins that stretched for hours. When I asked her, she said his wife had grown distant, and Victor just needed reassurance that everything was fine. But deep down, I knew something was shifting, something invisible but sharp enough to draw blood without leaving a mark. There were nights I'd wake up to find her sitting in the living room, her hand over her stomach, whispering softly, not to me, but to the child she was carrying. "He'll have everything," she murmured once when she thought I was asleep. And I realized then she wasn't talking about Victor's child, she was talking about her own heart, slowly being given away. The day she gave birth, Victor was there before I was. His wife didn't show up. The hospital felt cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones even under the bright white lights. I watched from the doorway as Victor held the newborn, his smile wide, his eyes wet with gratitude, and Sarah, pale and trembling, stared at the baby with a look I'll never forget. It wasn't pride or relief. It was loss, deep, hollow loss. After the baby was taken home with Victor, everything between us crumbled. She stopped eating. She'd wake up crying in the middle of the night, clutching her stomach as if trying to hold on to something already gone. One evening, I came home early and found her sitting on the floor, surrounded by baby clothes she'd secretly bought, little onesies, tiny socks, a blanket with the name Ethan embroidered in blue. "That's not his name," I whispered, and she looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "It should have been," she said. That's when I knew I'd already lost her, not to death, but to a grief that had no cure. Weeks later, she confessed that Victor had been visiting her even after the birth. He'd say things like, "You're the only one who truly cared, and you made me a father." It wasn't love, but it was enough to fill the emptiness she carried. I confronted Victor once, at his office, where he stood calm and unshaken. "She gave you everything," I told him. He just smiled and said, "She knew what she was doing." I left without another word. Not long after, Sarah packed her bags and moved out, saying she needed to find herself. I didn't stop her. There was nothing left to hold on to. A year passed before I saw her again, thinner, quieter, a ghost of the woman I'd married. She told me Victor's wife had divorced him, that he'd promised her a future that never came. I thought I was helping someone start a family, she said, but I destroyed my own. Then she walked away, leaving me with nothing but the echo of that first night. I'm doing it for us. Maybe she believed it then. Maybe I did too. But in the end, some choices don't just change lives, they erase them. And all that's left are the warnings we gave too late. Did this story touch your heart? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more hearts can feel these stories too.